The following story has been brought to you by StoriesToInspire.org.
One of Israel's most celebrated military officers of the past is a man by the name of Effie Atam. Effie served as the brigadier general of the IDF before embarking on a career in Israeli politics. When he retired from the military before going into politics, General Atam decided that he needed a break, a vacation, a real getaway, clear his head, clear some thoughts. So he traveled to a distant place, far away from Israel, where you can just be alone. Where did he go? He went to Alaska, specifically to northern Alaska, where the fishing is supposed to be amazing. And that's the peace that he was looking for, the quiet, the solitude that he'd been dreaming about for years. So he did his research, he found some place. In order to get there, he had to fly from one airport to another airport, to another airport, to a smaller airport, to board this small propeller plane, which took him to a smaller airport, where from there they would ferry him and a few other passengers to their designated launching spot in northern Alaska. In the morning, the group gathered together to receive its orientation, got their instructions from their guide before they would each be dispersed to their own private, isolated fishing spots. So one member of the group asks the guide, "I've heard that there are polar bears in this part of Alaska. Is that true?" So the guide says, "Well, let me put it to you this way. In all my years of leading expeditions here, I've never encountered a polar bear." Which doesn't mean it's impossible. It's possible for one to show up, but I don't think it's likely. So the fellow says, "But what if it does come? What are we supposed to do? Do we run away? Do we yell at it? Do we throw something at it?" So the guide says, no, whatever you do, you could never run away. Never run away from a polar bear. Because the second you will start running, he will chase you. And he's faster than you are. If you are confronted by a polar bear, this is exactly what you should do. Listen closely, he says. You stand up tall. You look the polar bear straight in the eye, and you say the following words to the polar bear in a very firm tone of voice. You say this: "Bear, this is my fishing spot. I was here first. Go away. Find your own spot." And the people started to laugh. "You're not serious, are you?" He says, No, I'm dead serious. Remember those instructions if you happen to encounter a polar bear." General Atam is listening to this, and he's chuckling to himself. "Wouldn't that be interesting," he said. "Imagine if after having survived all these major wars, and after having retired from the army with the rank of brigadier general, imagine I was my end as lunch for a hungry polar bear in northern Alaska." And he starts imagining the headlines in the Israeli papers: "Decorated Israeli general eaten by a polar bear." And he's laughing to himself because he's this big, tough guy who's not really afraid of anything, especially the fact that the guide said he's never encountered a polar bear, so the whole thing to him was humorous. They set out. Everyone's given their spot. General Atam is dropped off at his designated place. He unpacks his supplies, his fishing gear, his food, some books to read. He opens his folding chair, gets out the fishing rod, casts his line deep into the ocean, sits back and says, the words, "Hamachaya," This is life. This is what I've been waiting for. That was until he heard some noise. And it wasn't coming from in front of him. It wasn't coming from the water. It wasn't coming from the fishing rod. He turns around, and lo and behold, there it stood, a huge polar bear. His mazel. And it's walking directly towards him. General Atam froze. What should he do? Human instinct dictates when you see a creature that big coming at you that you run as quick as your legs can carry. But he remembers the discussion of the guide and the fellow asking the questions. Whatever you do, you never run from a polar bear. So after suppressing this desire, this human desire to run for his life, his next thought was, Where's my Uzi? Where's my machine gun? Wherever I ever went in Israel, I had a gun with me. But he's got no gun here in Alaska. And the bear is coming closer. When it's about 10 feet away, General Effie Atam knows that the next words that come out of his mouth were probably the most important words he would ever utter in his life. And he hoped and he prayed that the guide knew what he was talking about when he gave him those clear instructions of what to say to a polar bear. The bear is looking straight at him now, sizing him up. General Atam clears his throat. Bear, this is my fishing spot. Go away, find your own fishing spot. And the bear is not impressed. Atam realizes he didn't deliver it the way the guy said to deliver it. It needed to be delivered firmly, with strength, with conviction. So he decides he's got to try again. So this general who looked the Syrians in the eye during the many wars with Israel without flinching, the man who had driven throughout every village in the West Bank, the man who commanded the Givati Brigade and fought like a lion for many, many years for Israel, convinces himself now it's not the time to be a coward to this bear. So he stood up tall and strong, and this time in a firm voice he said, Bear, this is my fishing spot. I was here first. Go away. Find your own fishing spot. The bear stares at him, turns around, and leaves. Wow. That guy knows what he's talking about. He's back at the base when it's all over, and he approaches the guide and he says, how did you know? How did you know that saying those words would save my life? So the guide said, bears are predators. They look at everything around them in terms of prey. What defines prey in a bear's mind is how the creature reacts to the bear. It doesn't matter to the bear if it's an animal or a human. If the creature in front of it runs, that means it's prey. And then it gets on its legs and it runs faster than the creature in front of it, and it has lunch or dinner. But when the creature in front of it does not cower, does not run, does not show any fear, but assumes that tall posture, stands its ground and shows no fear and speaks in a resolute and confident tone, then the bear understands that the object in front of it is not prey. And that's why the bear backs off. In many of General Atam's speaking engagements, he often shares the story of his encounter with the Alaskan polar bear. And this is the twist that he adds to it, and this is why I'm telling you this story today. Israel is surrounded by bears that constantly come at us in the form of terrorism, war, or the war of deception. All of it is calculated to dismantle our state and swallow it whole. If we show fear, if we run and hide, if we try to throw a little piece, something here and something there, and try to calm it down, it won't work. They won't stop until they get it all. That's because they see us as prey. However, if we turn to the bears and we look them in the eye and we say, Bear, this is my land. This is my fishing spot. I was here first. If we say it loudly and clearly and with confidence and with courage, and we stand tall, proud, and resolute, and declare this and mean it, then and only then do the bears back off. Whenever the Jewish state has responded with strength to terrorism, whether it was the rocket attacks from Lebanon in the past, the suicide bombings of the Intifada, if you remember those days, or the barrages of rockets and missiles and mortars that have come over decades from the Gaza Strip, those sorts of protests and the outcries have always come out in force. Anytime Israel responds with strength, the world will scream, the world will yell. But if we don't come out with strength, then we're prey. We pay the price for it. Israel knows what it has to do. The world will scream. We'll talk more about this tonight. They will yell. The condemnations from the UN will continue to come every single day. But Israel understands, if they do not respond with strength, with total strength, with complete strength, then they are prey.
Enjoyed this story? Come again. Bring a friend. StoriesToInspire.org